Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, June 27th, 2024. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Scott Housel shares his take on Steve Wilkes' Mash Your Luck Challenge with Adam Ross of Twin Span Brewing and me. Steve's version is in the secondary fermenter, and he says it's looking good and tasting good. But in the meantime, Scott is doubling up on the challenge with two beers, a big dark orange chocolate version and a very satisfying sessionable small version. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. And if you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. As I mentioned last week, Steve is a bit under the weather. Nothing serious, but we haven't been able to get together to shoot any videos lately. I'm planning to put out a bonus behind-the-scenes video to subscribers about my attempt to carbonate a stout with fruit juice and then pasteurize the beer afterwards with a sous vide bath. Chris Colby and I recorded an audio episode about that beer, and you'll hear that in a couple of weeks. What you won't hear is a show next week. I'm taking the week off next week for a little summer trip to Milwaukee with Susan. She randomly picked Milwaukee a few months ago as a fun-sounding place up north that we've never been to that might be a bit cooler than Northwest Arkansas in July. I've been getting some great tips from y'all about places to visit in Milwaukee while we're there. The Lakefront Brewery Tour, it seems to be tops on everybody's list. I'm also interested in places like Mader's Restaurant, where we could get some delicious German food. There's a chance that Adam Ross will drive over from Iowa to spend some time with us. That would be great if he can make it. I hope I'm not jinxing things by mentioning that here. Since HomebrewCon isn't happening this year, at least not in the traditional sense, this will be my summer beer destination. At the end of this episode, Scott and Adam and I roll the dice for the next Mash Your Luck. I won't spoil what style it is, but it's my turn to brew. And I'm planning to brew that beer with yeast from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast. I ordered the ingredients from Dave Knott, incidentally, formerly of High Gravity, now of Small Batch Boutique in Broken Arrow, which is in the Tulsa area. I will tell you that this next beer is a challenging one, but I'm not afraid because those 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open package of Imperial Yeast have my back. The stir plate is dusty, because I don't use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon ale batches. Now, for lagers, I will make a starter, just to be sure. There's good news for Kvike fans. Imperial's seasonal A37 Pog, which is Ebegarden Kvike, has been extended as the seasonal yeast until August. So take advantage of your hot porch if you have one and get those delicious mango flavors and tropical fruit flavors that come from Pog when it's fermented at the upper end of its temperature range. I've got another pouch of Pog in my fridge now. I brewed a double IPA with Pog on the porch that is entirely too tasty. I sent that to Josh and Matt, and we'll taste that after the holiday. Anyway, ask your local homebrew store about A37 Pog from Imperial Yeast and check out all the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. Okay, let's taste some tasty stouts from Scott Housel. Scott Housel, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you for having me, James.
And Adam Ross, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Yeah, always happy to be here. Thanks. Scott's
a home brewer down in Florida. Adam Ross is up at Twin Span Brewing in Bettendorf, Iowa. You're the head brewer and part owner, right?
That's correct. Just crossed the 4-year anniversary mark. So, yeah, we celebrated that a few weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great. How many is that in regular business years?
Some days it feels like 40 years. Some days I'm surprised it feels like 4 months. I mean, it's wild. I mean, I've never owned a brewery or a business before, so maybe that's normal. I'm pretty sure I've aged at least 10 years in the 4 years, though.
Well, there's COVID years in there too, so yes. That's a multiplying effect. So what we're doing here is we're a while back, we got together and did a masher lock to come up with some parameters for Steve Wilkes. And Steve is still working on the beer. In fact, he's brewed the beer, and he sent me a note, I think today, saying that he racked it over to secondary, and it's tasting good. But in the meantime, Scott, did you get anxious? Did you get impatient? What you went ahead and did it yourself?
Yeah, you said Steve hadn't gotten to it, and I was looking for the next thing to brew, like right about that time. So I thought I'd give it a shot and see what I came up with.
Well, I appreciate that. So we've got extra bottles. I'm going to share those with Steve. And we've got another of the big version of this beer that we can taste with Steve's when we all get together, when that one is done. So his is a very dark beer, very big, and he cooked honey to do a bochet kind of a thing to achieve, a lot of his color. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to your beers today. And I say beers because you sent two. So do you want to remind us of the parameters that we came up with for Steve, and then kind of tell us, where you took it?
Sure. So it started with the ABV was very high. The bitterness was high. The color was black. The type was an ale, and the region was UK.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was looking at it, I saw this grain, and I just really wanted to do a Partigyle type of a brew. So I actually ended up doing the original roll, which was a very low ABV. And then we re-rolled and we got Steve the high one. So I realized later I did both.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Should I go through the recipe first, I guess?
Sure.
We'll go for the big one. That was, I did this as a 5-gallon. I actually made 3.5 gallons, but these numbers are for a 5-gallon. So I did 15 pounds of Maris Otter. That's 7 kilograms. I did a pound of Pilsner because I really wanted a little bit more. And I didn't have that 1 pound of Maris Otter to do it. So that's 72%. I did 1 pound, 6 ounces of turbinado sugar was in the primary. 630 grams. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. But I did a pound of pale chocolate. That's 5%. 10 ounces of brown malt, 3%. 10 ounces of chocolate malt, 3%. Did 10 ounces of crystal rye, also 3%, and 10 ounces of rye malt. And then I added what's the translation here, is a pound of treacle at 10 minutes from the end of the boil.
Which we might refer to as molasses. Is that right? Something close to that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of close. It was 75 Lovibond is what they put on the treacle. So it's a black tar sugary deliciousness. And the turbinado I actually added in the primary. And then where the difference is for the big one and the small one is after the mash, I moved all the liquid into another kettle, and I took some water that was at about 160 degrees. I took 2.5 gallons, and I put the grains into that for about 15 minutes. And then that ended up, I pulled an OG of, where is that? That is about 1039 I got from that.
Wow.
Yeah, and the big one, once I added the sugar in the primary, I ended up at 1.104. So that was a higher gravity than I usually go with.
So it's essentially the smaller beers is the second runnings or the rinse of the grain, or like if you were doing a batch sparge, you run out all the first runnings and then you put more water in the mash tun to do a second rinse. Instead of, batch sparging, running it off into the same kettle, you essentially made a second kettle.
Exactly. And then I did different hops. and different yeast after that point.
Hmm.
So the hops for the big one was at 60 minutes, I was about 37 grams of Target. At 30 minutes, I did, again, about 37 grams of EKG. And then also Fuggle, 37 grams at 30 minutes. And then I did EKG and Fuggles. I did 76 grams of EKG and 37 grams of Fuggle. So I went a little heavier on the EKG. And then dry hops, I did about 4 days of 37 grams of EKG.
Wow. So keeping with the British theme.
Exactly. And then I deviated a little bit on the smaller one. I did Sterling as the bittering, half ounce at 45 minutes, and then another half ounce at 15 minutes from the end of the boil, and then another half ounce at 5 minutes from the end.
You switched to imperial units. Is this an American ice version or?
No, it's the way I wrote it all out. And then it's 1.31 ounces for a lot of the hops for where it's 37 grams. So it's about an ounce and a quarter.
And half an ounce is 14 grams, just to keep everybody happy, and we should. So did you approach the water chemistry different in each beer?
No, I did that about the same. What I ended up with was, calcium at 54, sodium was 6, chlorides is 45, sulfites 48, and then I forget what HCO is. That's 43. That's a sulfate to chloride of about 1.1 ratio.
I should
know. So small amounts.
It's in the it's Beersmith, right? You're using or Bruin water.
I did it through Brewfather.
Okay.
And then that brought my pH right to 5.45 for the mash.
But there's more to the story on the big beer. I'm cheating. I'm looking at your recipe.
I really took my time. I usually have been doing 45-minute mashes, 45-minute boils. I did 60 minutes. I milled the grains the night before, and I prepped all the water so I could start at 7 a.m. And then I ended up, so I got the Imperial Pub yeast. I got 2 packets. I got it shipped to me, and it was a sudden hot spell, and those packets were a little bit puffed up. And I got a little nervous. So as soon as I finished the mash, I boiled for a little bit, and then I took off enough to put almost a liter into my old stir plate, which I haven't used for a long time either. And I took a big mason jar, and I had this little whisk ball that was in there. So I kept the packets separate. I put them in there. I would shake the one with the whisk ball every time I walked past it. And I set the stir plate. And then by 7 p.m., it was looking good. It was smelling good. So I decided to go with it. And it took off. It went crazy. So, the next day at 9:30 a.m., so I pitched the yeast at 7 p.m. At 9:30 a.m., my wife texted me that one of the beer things is sputtering and shooting liquid every several minutes. So that was my spunding valve that was at the end of a chain of kegs where I was pushing the sanitizer, purging through from one through to the next.
The spooning valve?
You had a
sputtering valve.
You had a sputtering spooning valve.
Exactly. So it was shooting sanitizer at that point. It was just squirting out once in a while.
Sounds like a Saturday night to me.
So we got on FaceTime, and I told her how to move some of the connections around. So it was basically just pushing air through the first empty keg until I got home.
That's nice. That's a supportive relationship right there.
Yeah, exactly. And she had never changed keg connections before, so I had to be kind of like, you got to pull on it, and you got to push.
Also sounds like a Saturday night.
Well. Yeah. And they were both fermented right about, I let the small one actually went a little warmer up to about 75 sometimes, 72 to 75. And the big one I kept closer to 72 for most of it. And they were under pressure.
Jeez, I gotta take a leak so bad I can taste it.
Whoops, that's the wrong button. There we go.
There you go.
I like that those buttons are right next to each other.
Yeah. Well, the first one I pressed is yellow for some reason. You think I'd remember that?
Yeah. I think if you ever talk about hop creep, you got to get a little snippet from Radiohead's Creep. Maybe the guitar part where it goes.
Zoom cut out your guitar part.
Oh, it's the clicking noise when he's about to come in with the distortion.
Oh, okay.
That's why it cut out. But so final gravity on the big one was 1022, putting me right about at 11.
Wow.
So I decided to call that one. This one goes to 11 because we had chatted about Spinal Tap a little bit. And then the small one,
I can hear the sustain. So.
Yeah, you can still hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then small one ended at about 1016, putting it right about 3%.
Wow.
So,
but I see more ingredients on the big one. On
the big one, oh yes. So then, at the end, I added orange peel. I added sweet orange peel at the end of the boil. For about 5 minutes. That was, this has 38 grams. So that's about an ounce and a quarter. And then that wasn't enough orange. So I made like an orange zest and I made kind of a tea and I added that. And then a few hours later, I tasted it and realized that I got to get that orange peel out because it was too much orange. So that little bit of boiled water with the orange zest it really smelled like orange juice, like an orange. It was really good. So then to kind of help things out and battle that orange flavor, I did a little coffee tincture that I had, and I did a little bit of vanilla to go along with it. Man, I had some an oak spiral I had soaked in rum. So I put a little bit of that in. I don't know if you're going to get any of that, but I just kind of kept trying little flavors until I was happy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All those aroma compounds, and I feel like there's probably a reference to Sniff the Glove in there somewhere, right?
You could have called it, I haven't seen it yet, but you could have called this beer None More Black as well. So.
Maybe it came out, I think, close to a porter.
So shall we open the small one first?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
All right.
And the small one was fermented with SO4 fermentus.
And I'm kind of surprised that it finished so high.
Yeah, me too.
What was the mashing temperature? Because you're really going to be
154 or 68C, 154 Fahrenheit, 68C.
Well, it looks like a porter. I don't know if I need more light in this room. It's just the glass I have. I have a tulip glass. I do see some ruby down at the bottom, but it gets pretty darn close to black at the top, and it's got a nice off-white foamy head that's kind of hanging around.
Man, that's very satisfying for a 3% beer.
Oh, I was very happy. It was just kind of I don't want to just throw away all these grains. And
yeah, absolutely. That's way bigger mouthfeel than when you get off most 3%. Really big, full. You can really tell that water's doing its part there. I get what'd you say the pH was on this?
I actually took the pHs throughout. It was 5.45 for the mash. At post boil, I was at 5.06, And then the final I got was 4.4.
I'd have to look at my notes and see where my dark beers usually land. That seems pretty standard though. But there's maybe it's just me and the fact it's my first beer of the day. But there's like an acidity that isn't unpleasant, but it was also slightly, I thought, unexpected.
Yeah, it's
Almost.
very Guinnessy.
Yes, yes, I was about to say that. It's like the Guinness bite almost to it.
Yeah, yeah, which is really good. And I don't know whether it's I don't know if you'd call it astringency, but but the kind of bite from the second runnings of the dark grains, maybe would that contribute to that a little bit? But I agree, it's kind of it's not tart, but it is acidic in a good way, because I'm not sure it is chewy for being such a small beer, but that acidity kind of helps balance any sweetness that might be left over in that final gravity. And then there's a big chocolate note in this, and dark chocolate that I could be talked into thinking that you put like a chocolate cacao nib tincture or something in there because it's just so prominent. But it's very much like, what is it, Guinness Extra Stout, the less smooth. not nitrogen capsule,
Right.
Guinness.
Which that one comes in a little above 5. So the fact that we're getting all that in a beer in the 3s is pretty impressive. And I do get I would say there's astringency here, but not as a fault. I wouldn't, if I was doing a BJCP score sheet, I wouldn't check that box and say, astringent. That usually denotes something went wrong. But this is really nice.
Yeah, that's why I kind of hesitated to use that word, because usually that's a negative, but I think in this case, it's a positive. I think it adds to the balance of the beer. I think this is one lower alcohol beer that I could drink all day and be extremely happy and not think I was being cheated of something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm already just about halfway through this. I need to eat this drinking too easy.
Yeah, I would think if you just handed it to me, I would think that it's around 5%. That's the impression that I get.
Yeah, I'd be there with you on that.
Yeah, it's with the crystal rye and the rye, that's about 6%. So I don't know if that could lend to a bit of that. But it got no adjuncts. There was no sugar. There was no treacle, no orange, anything, no coffee tincture. This was just straight up.
It's definitely, of the handful of times that I've participated in a Partigyle experiment, it's definitely the most satisfying and tasty, delicious version of the smaller beer. Usually the smaller beers are kind of like, oh yeah, that's fun, but you want to drink the big brother all day long, and the small ones usually wind up sitting in the basement and in their bottles until it's like, what was this beer? Oh yeah, it's time for it to go. But this is really well done, really satisfying, and I'd say it's a really good example of, would you call it a stout or would you call it a porter?
The only thing I think I would go porter, because I think I get a little bit of the brown malt, and in my mind that's where it leans. Is porters go a little more brown and stouts a little more to the black malts.
I'd call it a stout, but I'm a bit of a contrarian. If it has roast barley, for me, that's the only thing that separates a stout from a porter. And I know that's
Good
arbitrary.
enough for me.
That's absolutely arbitrary. There is no difference between stout and porter. No real difference. So it's whatever the brewer says. And so for me, it's, if there's roast barley, it's a stout.
It's pretty roasty. And again, it's just, I can't, it's hard for me to believe that this is a 3% beer.
How much percent rye was in here again, Scott?
It was 3% rye malt and 3% crystal rye.
Wow, that's pretty small to be affecting the body, but it could be. I've seen around 20% in our beers, to where you see a significant impact on mouthfeel and viscosity from rye. But at 6% total, I don't know if that's the I don't want to say to blame for this, but because it's a good thing, but if that's the cause of the mouthfeel.
Boy,
Yeah.
Steve is really going to like that beer.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he's going to be impressed by that. Yeah, wow, that I was, I was all ready to, like kind of speed through this smaller beer to get to the big one because I can't wait to to taste the big one. But man, it's hitting all the right notes. Really, really good.
Well, good. Yeah, when we got started, it was great because I told Adam, like, maybe I'll make a black IPA. And we were both kind of like, well. So Adam said you should look at some historic hoppy porters. So I was looking at those recipes, trying to get some of the numbers. And yeah, he recommended the fuller strain for a little marmalade, orange marmalade, to try to get into the orange flavor. But that's for the big one. This one used SO4.
Speaking of the big one, I'm going in.
Okay.
All right, let's
And
do
this
it.
this is a small bottle. Small in
way
volume.
way less hiss than the little brother.
The head is darker.
Yeah, it's a nice head though.
Is this bottle conditioned?
No, they're both keg.
Okay, it's going all in.
They were. But I did. I kept the carbonation a little bit lower, just thinking of milds and big stouts and big porters. But wow, mine has a nice head on it too.
Yeah,
Nice,
beautiful,
nice, creamy, really hanging around too.
Ooh, you can really smell that orange. Wow.
Yes, that is a little above marmalade in oranginess. It's not too like cleaning product orange, but it is certainly unquestionably orange on the nose.
There are those, I don't know if it's Brock's candies that when I was a kid, they were like the orange wedges, the orange segments, and they're, covered in crystallized sugar.
I can get that for sure.
That's what I'm getting, which is good. I love those. I haven't thought about those.
There's chocolate. There's chocolate on the nose too, and maybe it's just because Scott mentioned it, but I almost think like a little rumminess to it, like the. I want to say I've had a rum that had orange in it at one point.
Well, I'm not retching, so I guess I'm not getting rum. So, no, since you said chocolate on the nose, I can talk myself into chocolate. And those orange chocolate candies that you bang on the table. They're shaped like an orange, and you wrapped in foil, I think, and you bang them on the table to separate the pieces. Yeah, that's that kind of a thing now.
Well, that was my inspiration. I always wanted to do one, and once I got further along with this recipe, I was ready to do it.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
It doesn't have the acidity that the little guy has.
That's right.
It's almost no acidity. This is almost more chocolate milk than coffee, like in terms of acidity on the palate. It's not overwhelmingly sweet or thick, but it's also not. I'd almost call this one like an imperial porter. And the little guy stout. I mean, in my mind, it's that roast difference, that acidity difference is significant.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This is much smoother. I hate to use the word smooth. Steve and I, that's our joke word for a beer descriptor. But it is much smoother, whereas the first one was sharper. But I think it's appropriate. I mean, it's not syrupy. What was the finishing gravity of the big one?
1022.
Ooh, wow.
So just above the finishing gravity of the little one, right? Which is 1019, I think you said?
1016 on
16.
the little one.
Okay.
Yeah.
This would be perfect at Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
It is 97 degrees Fahrenheit and hotter, sunnier than hell right now here. So it's weird drinking this, but yeah, this would be perfect on a cold winter night.
Well, I think the chocolate orange is a Christmas thing.
Yeah, and it is very even on the palate too. That orange carries through. It's not overwhelmingly orangey, but this is unquestionably an orange flavored beer.
Yeah, I'm glad you toned it down. If it was stronger than this, it would have been inappropriate. But this is good. This is a nice level of orange, and it's good that sometimes people say, "Oh, I've ruined my beer. It tastes like this." But there are strategies that you can use to make corrections in a finished beer, and this is a good example of that. That you can take something that's you could serve it as is, or you could do like Scott and put some balancing ingredients in there to change it in another direction. Mm-hmm. So this is well done.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I was pretty mad at myself when I overdid it a little because I'm usually so careful and move up slowly and
I wouldn't. I always say this, but I couldn't tell you that this was an 11% beer. It's not boozy, and maybe it's the orange that's kind of helping to hide that.
No, it's not hot at all. There are no. This tastes like either very well, good job on the pitch rate and keeping things in the right temperature, or, and I know this isn't true, you aged this for a very long time. So,
no,
good job on this.
Thanks. Brew day was May 17th.
Wow.
Exactly a month ago.
Wow. And I did, Adam said his key to strong beers was to use a load of yeast.
I didn't type that noise out. Don't be telling my secrets to everyone.
Oh, sorry. So, yeah.
It really is use an obscene amount of yeast if you want to make a beer not taste like its true alcohol percentage, which sounds overly simplistic, but it is really a case of like I had an 11% alcohol beer that I brewed recently, and I used 5 times the amount of yeast, dry yeast, and it was weeks later. It was. Yeah, it tasted like this. There was no heat. There was no alcohol burn. You just got to throw a lot of yeast at it.
So the puffy packet of pub with the little starter had plenty of oomph to get this done. Obviously.
Oh yeah. It was 2 packets in 3.5 gallons, and at the end, my kegmenter, my fermenter keg. I cut the dip tube off, and there's usually a bit of liquid and a bunch of yeast at the bottom. And this was just all yeast. Like, I don't think there was any liquid on top of it.
So I should add to that, at side story, I was at the Craft Brewers Conference earlier this year, and there was a yeast scientist giving a presentation and talking about pitch rates. And I threw out the question of, hey, what really could go wrong if you pitched, quote, too much yeast? And I was a little disappointed in the response. She answered, but it was like, oh, you're going to get all these off flavors. Some of those yeasts are going to drop off early, and you'll get not acetaldehyde, but you'll get the dead yeast flavor that you get.
Autolysis.
Autolysis, exactly. Maybe and we've done those experiments in the past. Maybe if you waited like 3 months, but I just haven't seen that to be true. I'm not a scientist though, and I don't have all that much lab equipment. But I have seen no problem with going as high as 5 times the pitch rate, and all you get off of that is benefit.
I mean, even if you pitch that high on, say, a yeast that you want some yeast character, like a Belgian yeast. Would you get too clean a product if you pitch that much yeast?
I think so. If you all other things being kept the same, you kept in the same temperature range and everything, but then you added way more yeast, you'd get less stress on the yeast, so you'd get less esterification, you'd get fewer phenols and all that stuff. So it'd just be super clean.
Yeah, I think that there's some things that happen in the growth phase that are desirable in a lot of styles of beer. I'm hard pressed to pick a favorite. I like both of these. I'm shocked, but I like I like both of these beers. I'm not shocked that I like them both, but I'm shocked that that the small beer is holding up in my mind as well as it is with the bigger beer. I mean, usually I'm a sucker for especially big dark beers and it's just chocolatey and but dang, that smaller beer was just so well made that I'm having a hard time picking a favorite between the two.
Yeah, I know which bottle I'm going to finish right now, at least. It's not the 11%. No comment on the quality of the beer. It's just I got stuff to do. But also this is lovely. Kind of wish, Scott, you would have sent us a few more, but beggars can't be choosers.
Well, it's been a while since you sent some beers, Adam.
I know,
so
I know.
Not to guilt you anything.
I've got them coming out here soon, I promise. Maybe I'll have to slip in some extras now for the some extra incentive for Scott to send some more.
Yeah, I was going to say I wouldn't be offended if Scott got extras, over what you send me. It would not hurt my feelings. Although, well, it might hurt my feelings a little bit, but
we don't have to tell you.
That's true. Yeah, you guys already have a side conversation, formally on working on this beer. So,
yeah.
No, I've got a double IPA that I bottled the whole batch. So when Steve gets done with his beer, I'll send you some of those as well.
Yeah, no, it's funny that we're spending more time on the pre-roll, the first roll that happened in the last Master Luck. And it's just so rare to come across the beer under 4% alcohol that isn't, just a crushable light lager that is good. I think, and I almost hesitate saying it because I don't know if there's any truth to this, but there's a brewery up in Chicago that had a imperial, what did they call it? A session imperial stout or session Russian imperial stout. It was in the threes, and it was called Miska, Russian for little mouse, and it might have been a Partigyle thing. That's on par with that, Scott. I mean, this is professional grade. Like, people would buy this, whereas I would have to twist some arms if I had it on a tap list to say, hey, this is why you should drink a stout this low of alcohol. But like, you put it out there as a session stout, I think the fans would find it.
And I don't even know that you would have to market it as a session beer. I think you could just put it on the board, put the stats up there, but just say, that it's a stout.
Yeah, it depends on your market, I guess.
But, I mean, those that are looking for higher alcohol beers are going to be looking at the numbers anyway. But then, you give them this stout that tastes really good, and they're like, oh, my God, what is that? And then, lo and behold, it's 3%. So, well, now I'm all happy.
Well, I was as surprised as anybody.
Well, I'm not surprised. You've not sent a clunker yet, so I'm very grateful.
We'll have to post the artwork for the labels probably on.
Oh yeah,
I don't know, on the Facebook or Insta post when this gets posted, because I'm getting a kick out of that. The what's his name? The guy from the game show?
Whammy.
The
Whammy.
This is Whammy, and he's he's got his foot on the small beer. He's got his foot over a small Stonehenge arch. So So it's appropriate. Yet another Spinal Tap reference.
Yeah, and then I decided to call the small one the New Original because one of their first names was the Thamesmen, and then it was the Originals, but that was already taken, so they became the New Originals.
I need to watch that movie again.
I didn't know there'd be so much Spinal Tap references today in my life.
So shall we run some numbers on it? I haven't done one of these before, so I thought what we could do is quickly run the numbers because we've talked for a long time. We don't want to probably get into details on formulating a recipe. What we can do is run the numbers on the parameters for the next Mass Sherlock beer, and then I just sent a beer this morning to Chris Colby, the pasteurized fruit stout is what we're calling it, and so when we get together to taste that. Then we can come up with the specifics. So are y'all game for that?
You're
sure.
pressing the number, right?
Yes, I got my little wheel on my phone right here. So
can we add raw ale to the possibilities?
Not a
no.
I've tempted fate enough talking raw ale with Chris Colby. I'm kicking myself still for telling him that last beer that I sent him was a raw ale because I think he would have liked it if he hadn't. Anyway. Okay. Now let's start with ABV. Typically what we've had is very low to very high, 1 to 5. You say that this 3% beer was very low. I would classify 3% as low in my mind because I've brewed like 2% beers.
Okay.
So what if we get rid of the very low category and just go low, medium, high, and very high? What would y'all think about that? Is that cheating or just because there's so
that
much
works for me.
There's so much hubbub to do with the being careful about brewing.
I just want to point out that the numbers in categories are fine until James gets to play himself, and then he starts throwing out the extremes. So, in all honesty, I don't know. I feel like just from and this shouldn't concern either of you, but from a marketing perspective, 3 is very low.
Okay.
3, you have to tell a story to get customers to buy a 3. But I don't know where that cutoff is because we've had a 3.9 on before that sold very well.
Okay.
And a 3.8.
Right. I'll put it back in. I'll put it back in.
There you go. Get in there.
All right. Okay, here we go. And we're spinning. Oh, wait. Oh, we're spinning. Here it goes. It doesn't matter. It's number 4, high. So
Nice.
high. Let me write this down. High ABV.
Which is up to, it's like what, 8 to 11 or something?
Something like that. Yeah, I'd say at least 9. Don't you think?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Yeah, 9's a good start.
Good start. Said the guy who just brewed an 11. Okay, bitterness. Low to mid, balanced, high, and very high from 1 to 5. And here we go. Oh, I forgot to do the sound effect last time. I'll put it in later. Oh my gosh. Here we are at very high again. So we're just repeating. The other one was very high. Well, okay, so very high bitterness. All right, so high ABV, very high bitterness. Okay, color, we got pale gold, amber, brown, and black. Gold. We have number 2, which is gold.
That's fun.
So we're maybe into like triple territory here.
Yeah,
Ooh.
I like that.
a very bitter triple. That's fun.
Or maybe it's another double IPA. Okay. I have to change the numbers this time. So we have type lager, ale, and then there is sour. Would you be mad at me if I didn't want to do a sour?
A very high bitter sour.
No, I don't think we do that. I'm just making
All
an
right.
executive producer decision. Okay, so between lager and ale,
And raw.
number one. It's a number one. No, not raw. Number one, lager. Oh my.
Yes.
All
Oh
right.
my.
Get all the yeast.
Yeah, I'll get my connection.
10 times the pitcher.
Okay, so origin U.S., Germany, U.K., and Belgium. So here we go again. Wheel lands on U.K.
Oh.
Wasn't that Adam's Anglo Imperial Lager?
Yeah, it's very close. I want to say bitterness wasn't that high, but he still has his whammy. He can still, or joker, he can still swap out one of these.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna roll my joker on the origin. Maybe I'll get a Belgian. Nothing against the UK, but we've just done a UK.
Yep.
So I'm gonna roll the joker on the origin, and here we go. US.
Ooh.
Okay. So
you're done. It's a double IPA.
No.
yeah,
It's a lager. It's a lager.
Oh,
It's
that's
yeast,
right,
so
right.
This is a malt liquor with
Ah!
this is a malt liquor that's very bitter.
High ABV, very high bitterness, gold U.S. lager. Yeah, I think it's a malt liquor. Oh God. So maybe like a high adjunct. It's high bitterness. I don't know that I think that I'm going to do like an imperial American Pilsner kind of a thing.
You could do a cold IPA.
Yeah.
I'm sending your way, both of you. I have a cold IPA. It's a sneak peek here. That's 8.2,
Woo.
and it was essentially a cold IPAs with lager yeast. So it's and a lot of adjuncts. So you're not too far from trying your hand at a cold IPA.
But just
What was your fermentation temperature?
Oh, let's save some mystery for a future episode.
Okay, sorry.
But it's higher than you think. I'll say
Okay,
that.
there we go. All right.
But just because it's a very high bitterness doesn't mean that it's an IPA. It could be, a bitter,
Right.
just throwing a bunch of hops at the beginning of the boil.
And this is bitter perception. So this isn't high IBUs necessarily, although it probably will be when you're very high. But it could be a beer that finishes bone dry and has IBUs of like 50 or 60. It's perceived bitterness. Bitterness, I think we've agreed on with that category.
That's interesting. Oh, I'll have to send these to Colby and see what inspires what it inspires in him.
Yeah, you don't want to go raw on this one.
No, no,
No.
especially since it's a lager. I would want in my mind, these parameters. I'm thinking just like a big, crisp, clear, golden, sharp. Just you drink it out of the out of a paper bag.
Yeah, but good. Take it back. You don't need to make something that gives you a rock gut. You can make something that is actually good and fits that bill.
What was the Dogfish Head beer that they I think they sold in a paper bag or something? It was a malt liquor. I can't remember. It was years
You know,
ago.
Rogue did probably 15 years ago, give or take. Rogue made a malt liquor that was actually pretty darn tasty.
Yeah, I think. Of course, it's summertime, and I just drew a lager. But
Get the spooning valve out. Ferment under pressure.
where was it? There it is.
There you go.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. I'll have to think about that. That's fun. And I don't have to, I don't have to brew 5 gallons. I could do a small batch. Two and a half.
If you're going to send Scott and I multiple bottles, you probably should.
Yeah, this sounds pretty good. I've been really into Peroni lately and drank it out of the bottle, and I could see up the bitterness and
Double
up
Peroni.
the alcohol.
Double Peroni.
Or however you say double in Italian. I don't know.
Yeah. Doble is Spanish, I think. Oh, guys. Well, this has been fun. This 3/4 of an hour is gone in a hurry. This is a delicious beers, and it's a bonus. This is kind of a bonus episode because, this is supposed to be Steve's challenge, and he is working on it. I've seen photographic evidence, so hopefully before too long, I'll get to send you guys some of that, and then we can get together again, and we'll have some of the big beer left over, at least, where we can sample and kind of compare and contrast side by side.
Yeah, sounds like fun. And maybe I'll toss in my big black bitter beer that I've got kicking around in the brewery by then too.
Promises.
Well, did I meet the parameters? You guys said you liked it.
Yes.
You went above
Did I
and
meet the
beyond.
challenge?
You got extra credit because you did the original roll and the re-roll,
Yeah.
and you succeeded at both. You're kind of a little bit of a teacher's pet here, Scott. You're skewing the curve.
The brown noser stout. No, it was great, as expected. Thanks, Scott, very much for sending the beer, doing the beers, and going to the extra effort, and coming up with something again that is delicious and really enjoyable. And Adam, thanks for playing along as well.
Yeah, no. Anytime Scott wants to send me beer, I'm there.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Many thanks to Scott for brewing those beers and sharing them with Adam and me. And thanks to Adam for tasting along. Hope to see Adam next week. Fingers crossed up in Milwaukee. Chris Colby and I have already formulated the recipe for this big American lager. You'll hear that formulation in a couple of weeks when I get back. In the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Till then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. Talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.